Hi, I'm Tanya Valentin, a neuroaffirming family coach from New Zealand who supports parents to navigate their neurodivergent child's burnout recovery.
And I'm Emma Gilmore, an alcohol, food and body image counsellor from Australia, helping women rethink their relationship with alcohol and with themselves. Welcome to Meltdowns, Menopause and Magic, a podcast where two late diagnosed mums talk honestly about midlife, neurodivergence, parenting children in burnout, and finding ourselves again along the way.
If you've ever felt overwhelmed, unsure, or like you're the only one struggling,
You're not alone here. Grab a cup of tea and come and sit with us.
Good. Look at us back. Yeah, back after a little break.
So today, Tanya and I were talking about, we've been reading some posts over the last few weeks and it reignited our interest in the connection between neurodiversity or neurodivergence, and PTSD, complex PTSD, trauma, those kind of things. And it's often a conversation, I think, in our spaces that people have and feel very passionate about. And I think there's been some really interesting posts that came out this week. I think Lindsay, can't remember how to pronounce her surname. It's McCareth. Is it McCareth? She does really good posts. She's did a kind of like checklist of what kind of sits in this case, autism, and what sits in complex PTSD. So that was very interesting as well. And I thought maybe should we start off kind of talking about what the terms mean? Because I know that some people have a different idea of sorry, I'll just turn that. I've got my notifications are on my computer. What trauma is, and also probably to kind of be quite specific around what we're talking about in terms of neurodivergence as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that you want to share before?
well, my understanding is that, even though they quite often go together because many neurodivergent people encounter, situations and systems and relationships that can feel really traumatic to us, because often we might not be understood, or it might be misinterpreted, or sometimes, many neurodivergent children often are like victims of things like bullying and abuse. So, even though we can have traumatic experiences, it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as being neurodivergent. And when I think about neurodivergent, I mean, it's a very broad umbrella of what fits underneath that, right?
Correct.
There is our sort of like, autism, ADHD, PDA,
OCD.
Yeah, OCD, bipolar, all that stuff that fits under there, as well as, our acquired neurodivergence through things like strokes and, that kind of thing. So,
Narcissist,
disorder,
all of the personality disorders.
Like, I think, it's a very broad term to explain like where brains and nervous systems might diverge from what is considered the norm.
Yes.
Although,
and then
in inverted commas.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's sort of my understanding of it. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. I mean, I think really, for my I feel like I can really only talk from my own experience. So to kind of really preface that as well, because I know that the word neurodivergence gets bandied around a lot. And I think, often when people are saying neurodivergence, what they actually mean is autism or ADHD. And I think it's important to clarify what we're actually talking about and what we have the knowledge to be able to talk about as well. So I guess from my perspective is from me, probably I'm going to be speaking more with regards to autism and ADHD, because that's my experience and that's my children's experience. I'm sure there'll be things that are transferable, but I just want to kind of like give that bit of a caveat as well. And you may have other things to add in there as well, Tanya. I don't know, do you?
Yes, yeah. I think, that is, very correct. Like, I can only also just speak from my own experience and, yeah, definitely from the lens of autism, ADHD, PDA.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. So that would probably be the lens that I'm coming to this discussion to today as well.
Yeah. And I think that's where, because I think, it is varied and it isn't necessary. We can only speak about what we know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I was going to kind of express as well, because I know when a lot of people, and I think particularly, I think probably for you and me, we probably talk about trauma a lot. Like it's almost like part and parcel of living to be a person who has had traumatic experiences. But I don't necessarily think that the rest of the world sees it in that way. And so I think that often when people hear the word trauma, there's a kind of like association of what that means. And I'm not sure that it's always representative of what we're potentially going to be talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And I think for a lot of us, and this has been my experience, I can't say a lot of us. For my own experience, the lens that I often look through trauma in is through the little T trauma.
Yeah.
Sure, there have been traumatic things that have happened in my life, which are big traumatic things, but the majority of my life, and I think also just my children's lives as well, have been through that lens of the little T trauma rather than the big T trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we're talking about little T trauma as well, it often with, complex PTSD, which is where a lot of little T trauma kind of sits under. And just to kind of like do a little bit of clarification as well. So there's lots and lots of definitions of trauma. And I know sort of for me, I know some of the ones that I have sort of used in my life is like that sort of when something goes beyond the nervous system and the body's ability to cope with it. So it's something that goes beyond that, and something changes inside of us because of that. And so we know sort of like if you have an accident or you're assaulted or that can lead to PTSD, which is a trauma reaction to usually an incident or a set of incidents in a confined period of time, whereas complex PTSD tends to be more something that's happened continuously over a period of time. People have felt powerless. And often we think of it as, is it abusive situations, but it's not just that. It's not just abusive situations, and it's not just in family situation. As I'm just sort of saying this, and again, pipe up, Tanya, if you have a thought on it too. But it can also be, and I find this in a lot of my clients, what we didn't get to, like what wasn't given, that perhaps should have been given to children, can often lead to a altered sense of self. So that could be, not being met for who you are,
Mm.
so constantly being required to be a certain way in order to be loved.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to, because often people are like, oh, I don't have trauma. And actually in most human relationships, in our culture, it's very difficult to emerge from childhood if you're a sensitive person without having some kind of traumatic imprinting based on the fact that you've had to be a certain way in order to get love.
Yeah. When I'm hearing you talk about that, it automatically makes me think about the parts of us that we've had to like abandon or exile.
Yeah.
To almost like sever from ourselves in order to get that love and acceptance and belonging.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that is in and of itself a form of trauma and can be very and I think this is one of the times as well when we're talking about late diagnosed autistic ADHD experience. It can be a very profoundly life-shifting experience when you realize that the majority of your life has been a performance created to keep you safe.
Every place, like every psychiatrist, every psychologist, every counselor that I took my kids to, and we went through a lot before we got an answer. Everyone kept on saying they're so traumatized. They have like so much PTSD. What happened in your family? What did they go through so that they're this traumatized?
Yeah.
And first of all, like I was a child who was abused as a child by a family member, and so my first feeling with this was like, did something happen to one of my children and I didn't know about it? Were they abused in some ways?
Yeah.
Because this is what the doctors were almost like saying to me.
Yeah.
And then it was like, do they think that I've traumatized or I've abused my children? And I honestly couldn't think of a single thing, like a single event that could have like created this much trauma. Back then I didn't understand anything about complex trauma, but it was a really, really hard experience. And I remember going through so many appointments, just kind of sitting in the corner, almost just like in a very sort of fetal defensive position, because I just felt like I was under attack the whole time.
100%. 100%. I totally empathize with what you're talking about as well. Felt the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Horrible.
It is horrible. So yeah, I can totally get what you say about the, how a lot of parents feel just really traumatized about that experience of trying to get their child help.
Yeah.
People not believing them, just all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I so appreciate you sharing that, Tanya, because I think it's such a great example of the sensitivity and because Sonny, Jane Wise posted something, and I love her posts this week, and it basically had a circle going round with trauma and neurodivergence, because there's always this discussion, is it trauma or is it neurodivergence? And it's almost like, I find it a distraction, because it's like, it doesn't, like, to me, it's, the two go together because of the trauma of being a human being that doesn't fit the mold. And again, it brings back to that sort of, I love the definitions of neurotypical and I know I always say this because it's my favorite thing, but I love the definitions of that, of being, like a social construct, and that it's where, a neurotypical is somebody who can adhere to all of this stuff that is our modern way of living without it harming them. And I think that that's such an important kind of lens as well, because when we're sensitive, and whether we identify as hypo or hyper, and, you know, I have my own thoughts on that, but our experience of being with people when we're different is really traumatic, because connection's so important to all of us, right? It's like, and trauma happens in connection, it happens in relationship. And it can, you know, it happens because of, you know, a disconnection in some way. There's something that happens relationally for us.
Yeah.
It feels like that relationship is, you know, like our little hearts get broken a million times, you know.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a good definition for complex trauma, where your heart gets broken a million times and you've had to put it back together.
Yeah. And your sense of self gets altered, right? You forget this incredible little thing that, you know, that's precious and extraordinary, and you think you're bad and rotten and wrong. And you're not, but you think you are. And no one can tell you you're not, you know, it's that.
Yeah. You know, I think when you be thinking about, you know, this idea of masking, and I'm sure we've spoken about this before, it's something that sort of gets layered into every layer of who you are. To me, it's not just like some kind of like persona that you put on I mean, for some people it could be, but for me, it's never been this persona that you put on when you go into different situations.
Yeah.
To me, it's like every little part of me throughout my life was like learned very early on.
Yeah.
I mean, I even remember it, and I love my mum and my dad. I'm not throwing them under the bus here, but I remember there was a very explicit message from when I was really young that, and I think I used to always just put this into like the basket of religious trauma.
Yeah.
But because my dad was like the leader of our church, and so there was always this like, you have to fit a certain way. But from a very young age, I was told, no, you can't do that, or you can't be like that, because you have to be an example. And I think it's really ironic now that I do this for a living, and kind of people see me as an example, but which I don't want to be, but it's just like, you know, but it's another side. But it's just, you know, like all these little ways that we find out that we're not good enough, that we just don't fit in, that people don't want to be our friends, that we're strange, that we're weird, that, and we kind of have to break ourselves over and over again in order to fit in. And that isn't a neutral thing.
No.
You know, like it has such a really, really high cost.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can truly explain that to anybody unless they've actually lived through that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as well, that what you're talking about there, when I speak to most of the women that I speak to in midlife, there's this existential, well, it's not even existential, because it's not existential, but you could think of it like it's this intrinsic loneliness, a fundamental core of loneliness, constantly seeking to feel loved.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, is trauma. So to me, that's trauma, right? So if we were going to go, okay, so what's neurodivergence and what's trauma? To me, that existential loneliness is it is not existential. Again, it's just the way that people talk about it, but it's not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That to me that's trauma. And that's, you know, often foundational for a lot of people, is that just constant looking for home, looking to be cared for, looking to be loved, looking to matter, looking, you know, all of that sort of stuff. Such a big, I think. Yeah, you go.
I totally agree, because, you know, if you were a person who was born and you were like who you are as a neurodivergent person, and you were in an environment where there were other people like you and everybody was accepting and understanding of that, which, just doesn't happen.
Place.
Yeah.
Let's go there.
Would you being you inherently be traumatic? No. It's very much situational, right? And relational.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And funny enough, because I was thinking about what we're talking about today, I was reading Christy Forbes talking about, PDA and trauma, and the difficulty with, and I think for me, my PDA becomes stronger as I get older. I'm sure there's something hormonal in it as well. But that difficulty of not being able to adhere to conventional rules and not being able to kowtow. And I find kowtowing very difficult at the moment. The hierarchy imbalance that, we're seeking equity when we connect.
Yeah.
We're seeking to be seen as same.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have to be in that power structure, and often for whatever reason, we might be questioning or, I don't know, asking, not perhaps just adhering to what's being told to us to do. And, for certain types of people in that situation who are in the sort of more sort of, in the top of the power structure, they quite often you can find that they might actually be quite an unpleasant person anyway. So if you're first of all acting a little differently, or saying no, or saying I don't agree, or I don't think that rule makes any sense, I'm not wearing those shoes or those trousers, or I don't think that I need to do this, that, and the other. As a child, because there's so much, again, conditioning around who children should be, how they should behave, the compliance kind of side of things, often you can find, those people as well can be very, very cruel to a little child who is trying to kind of make sense of something that doesn't make sense in her brain too. And so then you get that kind of trauma as well. As I was thinking about that, I was thinking that's so true, when someone, and again, if we weren't naturally more sensitive people anyway, because our nervous systems are naturally on high alert because of the world being not safe for us, it kind of makes sense, like almost, and again, I'm just speaking out my experience, perhaps the wounds wouldn't hurt so much because we'd be more likely to go, it's not about me. Whereas I think when you're wounded, it's all about you because you think that you're the problem, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it totally does. I was thinking about, like, as you were talking about that, like in my early work experience, I had quite a few managers and people who were, above me in, the social structure of the workplace, who were very weren't only at the top of a hierarchy, but also very volatile, very very stern in the way that they spoke to you, and if you didn't adhere to that, then you would kind of endure the wrath of that person. And then you made me think about well, what is it like for children who are in school, and there's a teacher who's like that, and just how hard it might be in those particular situations for children.
Especially, the children whose nervous systems are wired for safety. It's because you're automatically going to be on the, you're a little jumpy on the anyway, and then someone comes in and was Rah! And you're I was quite scared anyway. And now you've just come in and absolutely smashed me.
Yeah.
I've got nothing left to give. And then we wonder why our children end up in burnout. It's like,
Yeah.
these poor little nervous systems.
Or just, totally shut down in a situation so that you appear to be like the good kid or the kid that's doing everything right. But actually in reality, you're just shut down and trying to protect yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. I was reading something on, we look back on, growing up in sort of like the 80s and 90s and 70s, depending on everyone's age. I've seen quite a few posts recently about, that we said that laughing kind of memes around, there was no neurodiversity, and then you've got a pen that's being chewed, and no one. I really love those. Like, and the glue being peeled off the hands and stuff. It's interesting as well, because I was reading somewhere about situational mutism, and is that the right terminology for it now? I don't know. I think it's been changed. I'm not sure.
I think situational's right. I think it was like people used to say selective, but I think it's not really something we select. It's, it's something that is more situational. So yeah, I think you're right.
And it might be the right term, so apologies if it isn't. But I was thinking, because my eldest, when he's very, very stressed, gets situational mutism. And I was thinking back to myself and thinking, well, often if I had something that was a really big deal and I really cared about it, I would really struggle to speak. And I was like, I just thought there was something wrong with me. I'd try and train. I'd be like, right, you need to go on more like presentation courses. Or, But my mum would be like, come on, let's practice this like thing that you've got to do for school so you can actually go and get it out of your mouth. And I used to stand there and just be like,
oh, I can totally relate.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been times in my life where I definitely struggled with speaking.
Yeah.
Struggled to get my words out, to get my thoughts out.
Yeah, same.
And it's still something that, I mean, it's not as bad as it was then, because I'm less, I think I feel more safe about sharing my ideas now.
Yeah.
But it's still something that does come up from time to time, where I might like read a comment, or I might do like, even just like in writing form, and I'm like, I need to like answer this, or or an email, and I'm just like freeze mode.
Freeze mode, yeah, for sure.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very interesting subject to talk about, I think, because it is complex, but I think it's impossible to have one without the other.
Yeah.
At the moment. Unless we
At
get
the
to
moment.
the band that you talked about that I'm going to visit.
Yeah. I mean, I remember like reading, and this was the bit where I was like, oh, okay, it's not just me. There was, and this was just in terms of parenting, where I read there was a certain research paper done on the fact that being autistic is inherently traumatic.
Yes.
Just to the intensity that we feel things.
Yeah.
And yet, and then all the things that we've spoken about here, about not being understood, not receiving love, not feeling like we belong anywhere, constantly feeling on edge. And in this paper, they said that it was, PTSD or complex PTSD symptoms were very, very common for autistic people for that particular thing. And that's when I started to make sense and go, oh, okay, that's why it seemed like my children had like been totally abused their whole life.
Yes.
Because probably to their nervous system, it felt like it.
Yeah. 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 It's, like you, I think that's the definition that we had of the hearts being broken, or a million times is a really good one, actually. I love that.
Yeah. Good one, Emma.
It was you.
No, it was you.
Because it is, it's like this, because that's all we want, isn't it? As humans, I think, humans want to know they're good. And I don't mean good as in good or bad, but just to know that like, their essence is good, that they're, they are a lovely thing. And then, to be loved and to be thought of well, it's kind of like, that's like our basic stuff, isn't it? And all of this breaks all that.
It does. It does. And I think even just at an existential level, what it meant for a human that didn't have belonging in a tribe.
Yeah.
Less food, less shelter.
Absolutely.
Take you into the forest and leave you there for the wolves.
Yeah.
So there's still this imprint that we have of,
I've got to belong, I've got to belong, I've got to belong, I've got to fit in, I've got to fit in, I've got to fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because otherwise I'm desperately unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's and let's not put two bones about it. It is unsafe.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Because, belonging sits really, really closely to safety.
Yeah. And if you don't belong or if you don't fit in, people are mean to you.
Yeah.
And so you are unsafe.
Yeah.
And it's our nervous systems are not wrong.
Yeah. And then when we as parents do something that goes against the norm, like in your work, choose to live without alcohol, which, a lot of social situations are propped up by the use of it.
Yeah.
Or in my work where parents are, trying to implement a new way of parenting that goes against everything that everyone's telling them.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why it's so hard to change those behaviors.
Yeah.
It's not that people don't believe that, don't believe in the change that they're trying to make. It's that everything else around us makes it feel unsafe for us to make that change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really unsafe. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because what we're asking, a lot of the time, like I think when I'm working with clients on alcohol particularly, it's like what I'm saying, what I'm asking, what I'm inviting people to do is to risk huge disapproval.
Yeah.
By the tribe. So the tribe doesn't like it when we do different to what the norm is. They don't like it. And so it is unsafe. And I think that's one of the things with the masking conversation as well. It's like we can't pretend that it's safe to unmask.
Yeah.
It isn't. It's not for it's really fucking brave and scary and we cannot lie and say it's safe.
Yeah. And in some situations, it's still not going to be safe.
And in some situations, we should keep our mask firmly on.
Yeah. Because there are, let's face it, there are lots of situations that people face where if you went unmasked, if you actually spoke about what it is that you are thinking or feeling about the situation, you could put yourself and your family in real harm, in real danger.
Yeah. And I know we've definitely felt that in circumstances that have happened for us over the last sort of five years or so. Like you actually, suddenly you start becoming a problem. And this is a big issue for, I think, anybody who is working, with the police on abuse situations is really, really scary because what I found out recently is that apparently the police, and this is in Australia, I don't know if it's the same in New Zealand, but I remember I used to go in and I wasn't experiencing domestic abuse. We were experiencing abuse from another person outside of our family home. But what I found, we'd have a, like, what do you call it when it's like an order against the person, so they had to stay away from you. I can't remember the name of it. But go into the police office, and sometimes the way that some of them were was as if we were, if you're the problem and you start becoming the problem. Then I'd heard recently that there's actually a list that the police kind of put you on if they think you're just like a multiple reporter. So even though you get this like piece of paper that says any issues, come and report, if you report on numerous occasions to the wrong person, you get put on the list of the, like, you know, and to not to be taken seriously. It's just like ridiculous. And also, I remember one time, I'm sure I've told you this before, when we went to the police station because this guy was like destroying the front of our house. And I remember going in there and saying, we'd have to move house, and saying, are you going to do something about this now, please? And the woman in charge of this was just like, you need to change your tone of voice with us. And maybe if you had a different tone of voice, then maybe we would be more responsive to your requests. Like, I've moved my family out of our home. I'm paying a mortgage and a rent to escape from this man. He's got a protection order against him. He's right now, you can see on the video cameras, he's right now on our veranda smashing. And apparently the issue is my tone.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
But it's that sort of stuff. It's like, but it's not safe because we try and communicate, and then, you know, apparently it's like the way we said it, and we don't even know why. What's wrong with the way? Surely that's like being angry and upset in a situation where you're very unsafe in your home. It like would seem to me the opportunity to be upset and angry.
Yeah. And, you know, I was just thinking from a parent perspective, you know, what often happens when parents go in and advocate for their children, you know, then you get labeled, you're that parent, like, you know, you're the parent that needs to be managed.
All the time. Yeah. Even recently, like the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple of, in our school now, we're pretty good. We've got a pretty good support system and they know us pretty well. But when you're out with new people, like, and you're meeting new people, and it doesn't matter how nice they are, there's just this sort of like, I don't know, pervasive view that the mother is the problem.
Yeah. You're too emotional, or you're too overprotective.
If we could just get the child without the mother, we'd all be all right.
Yeah. You know, or you're too whiny.
Yeah, whiny. And then that, again, that's a trauma thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, because we're not allowed to be upset. We're not allowed to complain. We're not allowed to advocate because we've got to, you know, like, put up and shut up. It's that sort of like, what for me, that always feels like that's a trauma response that we're like. And the other part I was reading recently, the book about, have you read this book? It's Recovery from Immature Parents or something like that. Have you?
No, I haven't.
Really good.
Yeah.
I'll post it in the notes. Okay. But she was saying that, because, you know, a lot of our, like, people are like, well, I can't have my experience because I've got to think about all the other people who are having it worse. You know, and that's often a way of sort of denying our experience. And again, that's another thing that's sort of like this condition. We're not allowed to have our experience. We've got to think of everybody else. Yeah, everybody else has got to come first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah. I mean, yeah, you know, I said part of that whole toxic positivity. Well, you can't complain about that because just look how good your life is. Like, there's so many people that have it worse than you. And I really do feel like there's room for complexity and nuance in that, you know, just because like somebody else has it worse, like you can, like, two things can be true at the same time, right? I can feel incredibly grateful that I have what I have in my life, and I can still find my experience really difficult. One doesn't negate the other.
But it kind of plays into that sort of like zero-sum game thing where there's only room, you know, we're all kind of like, if somebody's got something, you're taking it from somebody else.
Yeah.
And again, I think in immature parents, you know, people who are brought up by immature parents, often if someone's taking up space with their experience, they're taking the space away from somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of an interesting thing as well.
Well, I think what you bring up there is just, you know, how that whole idea of the generational trauma, right?
Yeah.
You know, how these trauma cycles just sort of all like follow through generations, and until we actually start noticing them and start changing things, even if the change is just really little, like we're just going to be repeating them if you don't actually take that brave step and that brave move to go, no, this ends with me.
Exactly. And it's hard, and we'll get it wrong, right?
Oh.
I think I said to you, Tanya, I was like, Daisy was having a hard time with school, and I automatically, and it's so frustrating for me because I think I've been learning about neuroaffirming stuff for so long now, right? I've been doing it since 2020. I feel like I should know this. I should know better. But then my unconscious brain comes in and starts acting in the patterns of behavior. And so, like Daisy was saying to me, I'm having this trouble that stores, and I'm like, okay, right, let's stop doing all the things you enjoy. And I'm like, what? These words are coming out of my mouth. I'm like, what the hell? And her little face is like, well, that's the only thing that brings me joy. And I'm like, what just happened? It's like someone took over me, and I was like saying these things that I don't even agree with, I don't believe in, but they're so ingrained in our, and I rectified it, but it's like, all this stuff like screen time and, respect and all these sort of ideas that we've all been brought up with is so deeply ingrained. It's so hard sometimes, isn't it, to like act as we know we should, as opposed to act in our conditioning.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, I saw a video a little while ago. I can't remember who was the person that, but I think it was one of like the big sort of like parenting people. Anyway, and she was saying every time, like parenting is a bit like learning a language.
Yeah.
We learn a language from our parents, and we become very fluent in that language because it's the language we grew up with. And then when we change the way that we parent, we learn a new language, but it still takes a lot of effort for us to remember the new language.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we are like really struggling with something, or it's really hard, or like we move from the thinking part of our brain to the automatic part of our brain, the old language comes out, right?
Yeah.
And it really made sense to me because my dad was brought up Afrikaans in South Africa, but our whole life he would speak English because we're an English-speaking family.
Yeah.
But when you get like really angry or stressed out, he starts speaking Afrikaans, and I was like, that just made so much sense to me.
That's so cool. I love that example. It's perfect too. Because I think it's the same like for drinking. Like for drinking, again, a lot of the time when people don't want to drink and they're drinking, it's because nervous system's kicked in, unconscious has kicked in. It's like, I'm going, but I don't want to do this. And the nervous system kicks in, right? Okay, this is what we do when our lid's flipped, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same. I think that's a very nice, compassionate way to hold it, because we won't get it right all the time, right?
Yeah. But the other thing that she said too was, even though sometimes we revert back to our old language, it's what we do most of the time that matters, not what we did in that one little moment.
Yeah.
But we've also, in doing this, we have taught our children the new language.
Yes. Yeah.
And so going forward, they're going to be speaking the new language that we spoke in our family, not the old language where we came from.
That's right. That's right. And also, I think the other part of it is the repair. It's like, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm spouting this shit.
Yeah.
Awful, awful stuff to my poor child. And then it's like, well, I'm so sorry. Straight away, I was like, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. I'm so sorry. And I think that's the difference as well, isn't it? It's like sort of like, it's okay to fuck up.
Yeah, totally.
Human. We but it's like the little things that we can do to let them know that they matter, no matter what they're doing in this world. Like, it doesn't matter what they're capable of doing, it doesn't affect how we love them. Because I know for our generation, it was 100%, you know, you got rewarded if you did the thing that everybody considered to be good, and you got punished if you couldn't do the thing. You know, like I always found like sitting down for homework impossible. And, you know, they'd be like this, and I'd be, poor me, I'd be sat there at the dinner table, everyone else would be relaxing and watching TV because I couldn't like settle down to do my homework. So I'd miss all like the nice times at home, sat there like unable to start. And it felt like I was such a burden. I was such an inconvenience. I was so, you know, it's such a, oh my God, it's just, why can't she do that? You know, and all this sort of stuff. It's that hope. And I know we don't always get it right, because I know I don't get it right a lot, especially, you know, when we're required to go beyond our capacity sometimes in order to accommodate. And sometimes you can't help but sort of like, you know, feel a little frustrated that you're being interrupted, or that you're, you know, having to go drive somewhere, or, you know, I'm talking about, you know, to look after someone's ARFID, that you have to go to some random place in the middle of nowhere that takes 20 minutes to get the specific food that they can eat on that day. And you have help. And that sometimes you're like, oh, I really don't want to do that, because it's like, you know, but at the same time, making sure they know that it's not an issue with them, you know, like that if they're not a burden. Because I think so many of us took this away, that we were a burden.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think that's where things like hyper independence comes from. And I think that's a real trauma response, you know, like
100%.
I don't need help from anyone. I don't, you know, I can't ask for anybody help because people are going to think I'm too much. I'm such a burden.
Yeah.
But I also just want to come back to like what you just said there. And, you know, how many times did your parent apologize to you for their behavior? I know I didn't receive many apologies as a child.
These didn't happen in our family. Things got pushed under the rug and everyone pretended nothing happened. Our world. And it leaves you so confused. I'm like, I'm sure that happened. And everyone's like, no, it's all fine. No.
Yeah.
So confusing.
It is. And then, you know, the other thing is, I think sometimes part of the work of being human is to, when we stuff up and we make repair with our children and we apologize and, you know, and we really mean it and we follow it up with action, maybe we're making it okay for them to feel like they can stuff up from time to time too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's really important that I think it's okay to fuck up. Because I remember in thinking in the alcohol space, you know, so many people are like, oh, I can't tell my children because if I fuck up and I drink when I didn't want to, then, you know, they'll think less of me. And I think, do you know what? No, they'll see you trying, falling down, getting up again. That's the thing. It was okay to fuck up. We get to fuck up. We're human, you know.
Yeah.
And everyone pretending that we've never fucked up in our lives. It's just,
Because, you know, the truth is so many of us grow up believing that we can't make mistakes, that zero mistakes are allowed.
Yeah.
And like, you know, everybody else around us obviously isn't making mistakes because mistakes aren't allowed. And then that can become, you know, something that's just really hard for our children because they think they have to be perfect because we are showing them this like facade of perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got an example of this, like my parents growing up, they never fought. They never argued. Or I'm sure that they did, but we just never knew about it, right? And when I got married, my husband and I, we argue a lot. And I spent such a long time feeling so ashamed about that and thinking that you know, I must just be like a really difficult person or because obviously people who have healthy, happy marriages don't argue. They just get on the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think that it's really important for our children. Great, you know, it's not great if they see us make a mistake. It hurts. And I also think it's important that they understand that mistakes and things like that are also just part of life, and they're going to fuck up at some time too.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. I think that was I've really enjoyed, I miss talking to you. I don't realize how much.
Oh, I miss talking to you too. It was really lovely. It's like catching up with a good friend on Friday.
I know, it was so nice. Yeah, so I think I guess where I am with it, and it sounds like it's kind of like where you began, is that the two are inextricably, that's not a word, I've just made that up. Inexplicably, I don't know the right word. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's difficult to separate. And, yes, of course, there are things that are specifically, like when I was reading Lindsay's checklist, which is great, she was talking about things like stimming and things like that. And I can't remember the other things now off the top of my head. But there was things that was, very specific to, an autism diagnosis. And then there were other things that she had picked out as kind of like specific to CPTSD. And it was really useful because I think sometimes it is interesting just to kind of like work out what's from what. But also,
and I think
go on.
We'll link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely, because it was a really nice little resource. But just this idea, really that the two, I think it's impossible to be in a neurotypical world if you're a neurodivergent human and not be traumatized by it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just remember to put in the link to that research around trauma and autistics as well.
Yeah, good.
Because I think that's a good one for parents and autistic people in general to read.
Because I think as well that sort of existential loneliness, again, not existential, real.
Yeah.
Intrinsic, like base loneliness. That is so interesting too, because of the fact that all the things that we've talked about, and yet it is a trauma response, but it is the autistic experience a lot of the time. Like I very rarely come across people who don't have that to some greater or lesser extent, where we're having to learn how to be and trying to understand how the social kind of like conversations go and why and trying to work out why what we said didn't land, but yet somebody else said it did land, and all of that sort of stuff. It's like you go together so inextricably. Do you have anything else that you want to add at the end?
No. I think it's just been a really lovely conversation, and I've really enjoyed having it. And I'd really love to hear from anybody who watches this or listens to the podcast, what your views are on this.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's something that is quite a common experience for many people. And I'd love to hear any questions or anything that people would like to add, or just even your own lived experience around this.
Yeah, me too. I think I love to be in conversation with more people, because I think this is how we create that world that you were talking about, Tanya, where we get to like be ourselves without feeling so scared of what the implications of that are, when we get to share our experiences with each other.
Yeah. And, I think just even having podcasts like this or people creating content and putting it out there, any little thing that helps you to feel less alone, to feel seen in your experience, to realize, it's not just me. All of these things slowly is how we slowly change the world.
100%. 100%. It really is. Finishing up there, did you have a little glimmer to share with a piece of magic?
A piece of magic. I think the thing that's felt really magical to me this week has been that I have started seeing all the little daffodils come up in my garden. So that's been really lovely. I've just, like, I always love it when that starts happening, because especially here in the southern hemisphere, but kind of, to me, it really indicates that we're sort of heading into those warmer times, and the dead of the winter is sort of heading behind us. So yeah, that's my little bit of magic for this week.
Beautiful. I had, I think probably mine is seeing a friend. I saw a friend. I have been very insular for a little while because I've been very involved in work and parenting, and I just had no space for anything else. And I saw a very good friend of mine. And whenever I see her, it's always so funny because you know, when you're like, you feel like you're doing all this like hyper focus on the things that interest you on your own, and then whenever we meet, it's like we've both been hyper focusing on the same thing. It's so she's like, oh my goodness, I've been focusing on this, and I'm like, oh my goodness, me too. And it's just so weird. It's like, it's kind of like there's that lovely belongingness, that relational safety, that, you know, we're in the same, like, she gets my weirdness, and it feels really nice. You know, that feeling, it just feels really nice. It's a bit like when we talk, it's like that. Oh, yeah, we can get excited and interested in these things that we both find interesting.
Absolutely. Friendships like that are so magical.
They are. Yeah. And they accept you as you are, kind of thing. It's nice to feel like that. Yeah.
You just feel like you can just breathe.
Yeah, you can just breathe. You don't have to pretend that everything's fine all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much, my friend. I will see you next Friday.
Yep. Have a great weekend.
You too. Lots of love. Bye.
Thank you for spending this time with us.
If this conversation helped you to feel a little less alone,
Or you're a late diagnosed mum navigating alcohol and body image in midlife.
or you're parenting a neurodivergent child in burnout and need support, you're welcome in our communities. Links are in the show notes. We'd love you to share this with another mum who might need it too. Please be sure to like, comment, or subscribe so that you can be notified when new episodes air. This also helps the podcast reach more mums who need it.
This podcast shares a lived experience, not medical advice. Please reach out to a professional if you need individual support. We respect a range of lived experience. All guests appearing on the show are talking from their own individual lives, and their view may not reflect the host's perspective.